You're listening to the Agent and the Fan podcast with sports agent Chris Leible and fan Lou Columna.
Welcome, everybody, to the Agent and the Fan podcast. I'm Chris Leible. I'm the agent here with my man Lou Columna. The fan, Lou, what's going on?
Not much, man. Getting ready for the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl is here. We had the playoff games just passed. A lot of controversy, I think, especially in that Bills-Chiefs game.
Yeah.
The usual, the NFL ran that ad campaign years ago that it was scripted as a joke, and ever since then, everybody's kind of going with that now. I don't know that I agree with all that. I thought there were definitely some questionable calls, and I think the way they spot the ball nowadays is kind of archaic.
Yeah.
You would think they would figure that out. You're starting to see things we could talk about a little bit in the baseball side, but listen, Chiefs are the Chiefs. They always find a way to win, and they're back in the Super Bowl. Good for them. And as far I know, people don't like tired of seeing them. We're all tired of seeing Taylor Swift, but other than that, I got nothing against the Chiefs. And I think as we might have talked about in the past, I had Pat Mahomes Sr. On the Mets when I worked there, and he's a good guy. And
let's get him on.
Yeah, we should get him on. But yeah, Pat's a good guy, and so I as far as that goes, good for them. And then the Eagles are just playing great, and it certainly seems that Saquon was the secret sauce that they needed to kind of take their game to another level. So it should make for an interesting clash. And I'm looking forward to the game, and we could talk more about it. But obviously, I think we usually generally focus on baseball, and there are some top things here that we should talk about as far as what's going on in baseball, because, well, yeah, the Hall of Fame we got to get into. But baseball season is literally around the corner now, and there's a lot of unsettled things. I want to get into that. But let's start. I think let's start with the Hall of Fame. And obviously we had another good class. What do you got on that, Lou?
Listen, I think the voters got it right. There was actually talk before all of this that CC may not. I didn't see it, honestly, and this is just not even as a Yankee fan, but I just felt like his numbers deserved that consideration that he got, and at 86%, really good. Obviously, the same thing with Jeter, with Ichiro, you had the one guy. I mean, it's ridiculous now at this point. It's like if Griffey is not 100% and Jeter, come on, But that's for another day. And obviously Billy Wagner, somebody you're very familiar with. I think again, well deserved. I think that he really. He wasn't a darling of the writers, with the numbers, but I think he had such a great career. And, I think he really, for me, it was well-deserved. And just to see his emotion when he got that call, for me, said it all.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm glad you did the rundown. So listen, I think with any Hall of Fame, you got to represent, positions have to be represented. I think relief pitchers hadn't been represented really strongly, and obviously they're a huge part of the game now, especially when it comes to the closers. Billy Wagner is certainly one of the best to ever do it. He's had a great career. I'm happy he's in. Okay. That said, and while we're on Billy, I wanted to say one thing, and I want to get into this a little bit. Okay. Billy is the second all-time left-handed save leader. Okay. And I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to say either way, like what it is, but the all-time save leader is a friend of our show and a friend of mine for a long time, John Franco. Okay. John Franco did his job differently than Billy Wagner did it. Okay. Billy Wagner threw hard. Okay. John Franco did not throw exceptionally hard. Okay. John Franco was effective by by keeping hitters off balance. He had the great changeup, but he was effective, and he was effective for a long time. Okay. He has more career saves than Billy Wagner. I find it very interesting that Billy Wagner got in there, and John Franco's not even a subject of discussion. And
I don't get that.
I don't think that's right. And I think at some point, look, they finally in the NFL Hall of Fame put Ray Guy in the Hall of Fame. He's the only punter in the Hall of Fame. There's no football without punting. Okay. Ray, the top punter should be in the Hall of Fame. The top relief pitchers have to be in the Hall of Fame. And you got a guy who has 425 career saves in John Franco. How is he not? Again, up for debate. We could talk about it all day. When my kids, and I talk to my kids about the Hall, they always ask me about the Hall of Fame. I always say it's length and consistency of career. Okay. John Franco was extremely consistent, and he did it for a longer time than almost anybody. Okay. And that has to be under consideration. Now, will he get in? I don't know. I do think the times are changing a little bit.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think that, but I want to go use this platform just right now to just say that John Frank, if you're going to put Billy Wagner in the Hall of Fame, and I 100% am on board and believe he belongs there, John Franco has to be mentioned in the consideration. If you do the side-by-side comparison, Wagner's quality is better than Franco, not off the charts better. It's better. Obviously, Franco's quantity is better than Wagner. And people will say that he was a compiler or whatever, but the guy pitched for a long, long time in the big leagues. And you don't pitch a long, long time in the big leagues if you're not effective and still getting the job done and doing it at an extremely high level, which John Franco did do. So I'm just going to go on and say that. And and again, I want to get into somebody else who I don't know very well, but John Franco, yes, I do know him well. Yes, he's a friend, and I've known him for a long time. But John Franco deserves consideration, and I believe he's a Hall of Famer. And I think that's something that people need to start looking at a little closer.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's been talk about that recently, where you have younger voters now than you've had before, and these younger voters are looking at the analytics a little bit more, and they're looking to as someone I heard them say this the other day, and I think it's true. They're looking for ways to get you in now, whereas before they were looking for ways to leave you out, and I think that's going to bode well. But
if that's the case, then guys like John Franco need to be considered, and him specifically. So,
no, I agree.
And it's funny. So I have another one that was brought to my attention through a friend, and I have it here. And again, Ichiro, I got a chance to. I spent time in Seattle. I had clients on the Mariners at the same time who raved about him and talked about what a great teammate he was, what a great player he was, all the things he could do, all those things. Without question, also didn't start his career here. So, I mean, he played in Japan before he came here and did what he did. So his numbers are outstanding. It's a no-brainer. 99.7% of the vote, and you mentioned one person didn't vote for him. Again, to me, it's a no-brainer. But I got something to add to this. I have another player here, and I'm looking at his stats. He has a higher WAR. His games, plate appearances, and hits are behind Ichiro's. Hit more home runs, drove in more runs, stole more bases. Batting average was 12 points lower than Ichiro's. Okay. Higher on base percentage, higher slugging percentage, higher OPS, and higher OPS plus. Okay. This guy got 3.2% of the vote, just like John Franco, not a consideration.
Wow.
Kenny Lofton.
You know what? Yeah. Wow.
Kenny Lofton, and I'll tell you this, was a great player in his day when he was playing and at his peak. I consider him a little bit similar to my guy, my client and my compadre Jose Reyes, in that he dominated the game from many different standpoints in that period of time when he was doing it. But Kenny Lofton's got some really great numbers, and they are really, I mean, if you go down the 12 categories or 10 categories, just read you, he leads them in Ichiro in like seven more by 7-3 or whatever. So
yeah. So Kenny Lofton falls in, and this is what drives me crazy about these voters. You know, he was not a well-liked person by the media, right? And you know that has something to do with it. You know, which drives me crazy.
Yeah, and we have, again, we've had plenty of reporters on and media members that have talked, and we could get into that with them a little bit at some point. I mean,
like, but why isn't Albert Bell in the Hall of Fame? Albert Bell to me is a Hall of Famer.
No, I agree, but no, I agree. But look, Kenny Lofton's, again, it's up for debate whether he's a Hall of Famer or not, but his name doesn't come in. It just seems like some guys just, they already have that cachet, and some guys don't. John Franco and Kenny Lofton are both guys who don't have the cachet for whatever reason, while the guys that we're comparing them to just got in. So listen, I think this is something that's got to be looked at closer. I think, like you said, the world is changing. We'll see if some of the different things will change some things. Certain guys have waited around a long time, and finally gotten in. Also, in the history, and again, get so far into this, but there were a lot of things going on back in the day. You wash my back, I'll wash yours. Mm-hmm. Guys, players on the committees. I've heard the stories with Ted Williams and get pushing for his guy while Joe DiMaggio was pushing for his guy or whatever it was. Or Stem Musial, I think it was Ted Williams and Stem Musial, I think, with a couple of the Red Schoendienst, I think, and he wanted him in, and he wanted him, and they kind of worked it out, so they both got their guys in. Again, like, this should be looked at closer. Respect the media, most of them, and the job they do, but again, I think it would be nice to see guys be looked at again, and kind of. I know they're adding committees and doing this, but it's such a great place. I know, I spent you were there this summer, right?
No, not this summer, but yeah, I mean, I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was there this summer with my, the team I coached and my son, and it's just, there's nothing like it there. It's the coolest place.
What's your take? Not since we're talking about this, what's your take on the steroid guys and the Hall of Fame?
I liked what they did. I kind of like what they did. So I like where they are with it now.
Really? I disagree, man. I think they should be in. I think that to me, it's a Hall of Fame, but it's a history of baseball. And I think that, we can talk about it all we want. That was a part of history. And I think these guys should be in. I don't want to say like an asterisk. That's ridiculous. But I think, putting them in, but also having a section and saying, hey, this happened during this time, because Barry Bonds' greatness is undeniable. A-Rod's greatness is undeniable. Roger Clemens' greatness is undeniable. Where I fall is with those other guys, and those guys, right? Brady Anderson was not a 50 homer guy. He's not a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? I consider Mark McGwire a Hall of Famer, as he was going up through the Oakland teams, and I was like, wow, this guy's projecting to be a Hall of Famer. I can decipher who I feel, to me, was a Hall of Famer with or without the steroids. And I think like those guys belong in there. I think you're doing a disservice to baseball and to a lot of other people.
Listen,
by not recognizing and acknowledging, hey, this happened. It was unfortunate.
Okay, but
this was the era. But like I said, Barry Bonds' greatness is undeniable.
Okay, well, so is Pete Rose's, so is Joe Jackson.
Pete Rose
so is, you can go on and do it. But I mean, it is what it is. They did something they shouldn't have done, and that that's precluded them to this point. Will that change at some point? Don't know.
So.
Pete Rose is gone now, and no disrespect, Mark McGwire was the biggest jerk I've ever met in baseball. So it just wasn't. It wasn't. I dealt with him. He was not a nice person at all to me,
Yeah.
and my dealing with him, and so I don't really have any sympathy towards him. Barry Bonds is a great player. You know,
Not the nicest person to the
sizes,
media.
but you know, but what would he have been if he didn't, go up 4 hat sizes and grow, whatever. I don't know, but
I mean, like here. I mean, listen. You were, you worked for the Mets. You're an agent. You tell me. You still got to hit the ball, right?
yeah,
Like,
but when you hit it, it's going. Is it going out when you're not taking?
But that's my point. Like, that was my point. Where like with Brady, like with the Brady, I guess I'm picking up Brady Anderson or Brett Boone, for example. Like, you got to hit the ball, right?
Yes. Those guys, Brady Anderson did it that one year. He hit the ball
I
a
don't
lot.
think, like you still got to have hand-eye coordination. There's still a skill set that you got to have to be a great ball player. And I think Barry Bonds had that. I think Roger Clemens had that. I think A-Rod had that. And yes, they took it, I don't know. I just feel like
Allegedly,
right? I just feel like these things, like you got to put it in perspective. And I think, listen, we could talk about Bud Selig and
we could talk about this subject.
We can go down that rabbit hole, which we
is
won't
a 2-hour special, but
yeah,
I'd rather not get into all that. No, I think the Hall of Fame is. I think they got it right. My point is, we got to start giving everybody fair chances and looking at guys closer. And the Kenny Loftons and John Francos need to be looked at and considered, and especially, like I said, John Franco. Closers are underrepresented in the Hall of Fame. Here's the all-time lefty save king. Nobody even mentions his name.
Yep.
Pitched in New York. You could say New York, whatever. Pitched in New York. Nothing. But anyway.
But I think to your point earlier, and I'll just to put a button on this, is I don't. Johnny Franco.
And by the way, excuse me 1 second. John Franco, also, while we were just talking about, he pitched in the steroid era.
Yeah.
And still did his job and did a great job. He pitched in the toughest time.
Great point.
Anyway, go ahead.
To me, and this is why it bothers me a little bit. He wasn't that sexy relief pitcher, right? Coming in, throwing.
That's the whole thing.
And that's what bothers me, because I'm like, he pitched effectively. He carried these Met teams in a lot of years with closing those games out, and I feel like he was almost like taken for granted.
Yes.
And because he didn't throw 98, 99.
Right.
Where's Randy? Not Randy. Well, Randy Myers, right? Randy Myers. Rob Dibble. Where are they?
Yeah.
They fizzled.
But length and consistency of your career. Randy Myers is in the top of the close.
No, I mean he's a solid. He was a solid reliever. He doesn't match
in the top 15 or 20 all-time save leaders. But anyway, listen, that's the Hall of Fame. I know you would wanted to talk about Pete Alonso.
Yes.
I would like to talk about it as well. He's, as of this we're recording, he's still out there. He's a free agent, hearing different things. We talked about it with our last guest on our last show with Andy Martino from SNY. He didn't feel like it was imminent. He's coming back to the Mets. Still doesn't appear that he is. Obviously, the owner, Steve Cohen, has spoken about it now and said there were difficult. These have been difficult negotiations for the team. What happens next? Where does Pete go? And I'll give you my perspective as an agent, but I know you had some thoughts on this.
So yeah, I do. Listen, I think it's unfortunate what's happened to Pete, right? He's, by all accounts, he's a great teammate. The player. Listen, the fans love him. The fans absolutely love him. At the Mets, amazing. I forgot what they call it. People were
The
screaming
fan fest, yeah.
fan fest. They were screaming for Pete. Steve Cohen heard it, right? Every teammate or current teammate, let's just say, loves him, right? And
Yeah.
I just feel like he's really he became a free agent and he had a not a great year, and then he's a free agent within a year that it just wasn't the right time, right? 2 years ago, maybe it's a little different, right? But I really think that the Mets, and I'm not a Met fan, you gotta sign Pete Alonso. If you sign Soto, you gotta sign Pete to help him out. And I hear the talk of Met fans and people on the radio saying, oh, because they're gonna go after Vlad. You don't know if they're gonna get Vlad. Vlad could sign tomorrow with Toronto an extension. We don't know that. He very well can be a free agent next year, and the Mets may not get him. Who knows? There's a lot of variables. For all we know, who knows if Freddie Freeman gets injured and the Dodgers jump in all of a sudden? Who the hell knows? You know what I mean? And so to me is you have a guy who's played for you. You basically raised this player.
Listen, Lou, I think there's an interest on both sides of this. Okay, I think there's an interest on both sides. They haven't been able to come to an agreement on a deal. Now, again, you like to spend everybody else's money. That's not yours. But
I'm a fan. That's what
I know. You're
an agent.
Again, but the Mets feel like, and again, I'm looking at it from both sides of it, which I have to try and do as an agent. Obviously, I take the player's side on it, and I could certainly make a great case for Pete Alonso and why he would be a great sign for the Mets or for anybody, and why he should get paid well, because I do think he's a very consistent producer. Now, that said, he's clearly not a darling of the new wave of analytics and metrics and things of that nature. And you're seeing his according to those people, his numbers are slowly declining each year. So those options are kind of out, that long-term deal that I think, again, I don't know. And my disclaimer will always be, unless you're part of it, you don't know the full story. So I'm not going to, I'm an agent, so I wouldn't want somebody to assume anything from me. But from what I could see, it seems like they thought there was going to be a huge market at some, whether it was when they turned the contract back down, whenever that was, a year and a half ago or whatever, or not. They thought there was going to be more. And obviously it hasn't come to fruition. And, Scott Boras signed him during the season last year, and or was a year ago, I guess. And so Scott, obviously is going to, try and max out the best he can and try and gauge the market. Now, obviously the market's been kind of crazy. It's been a little bit of case of musical chairs, and Pete's left standing up and he doesn't have a chair. He's still a productive player. He's definitely limited a little bit by his market, because I'm sure there are plenty of teams that would love to have him that can't afford him, even at whatever price even if it's an AAV, on that AAV, even if it's only a 1 or 2 year deal, which of course he doesn't want. And he turned down a pretty big deal. And in all honesty, if I'm being honest, I'm looking at this, I think he turned down a fair deal. So a fair offer from the Mets. And again, when you are looking at deals, and obviously as an agent, you always want to make a groundbreaking deal if you can. And certainly Scott Boras has done that many times, including obviously the Juan Soto deal, but just this offseason. But sometimes how we base our contracts are generally off comparable players and contracts. Okay. And
agreed.
Pete's comparables. And again, I've never sat and delved into it because I'm not his agent, but his comparables are the group is very small. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
So you're looking at Freddie Freeman and you're looking at Matt Olson. Okay. They're two terrific ball players. Okay. Pete is a great ball player too. Pete's power is as good or better than both guys.
Better.
But his the other guys are probably better all around players, if
But
I'm
all
being
around, I
honest.
agree.
And I love Pete. But you know, their contracts were what they were. I remember people criticized Freeman's contract. They didn't think he got what he should have gotten. And you know, Matt Olson was a little bit different because he was, you know, he was still, you know, Freeman got the free agency. Olson, you know, the Braves locked him in. You know, I think that they overestimated that Pete was gonna, you know, and didn't really take into consideration that his metrics were slowly sliding. And then when you start looking at and again, these are a little outdated contracts, but when you look at the big power hitting first baseman, and again, I'm not comparing Pete to these two guys because I think these two players are slam dunk Hall of Famers, but Albert Pujols and Miguel Cabrera, the last 5 years of their contracts, they struggled. And Miguel's a great guy. We did his, you know, but I mean, the teams you paid for his prime years, and you know, and you know, again, Miguel still was a productive player at the end, just like Albert was still putting up good numbers, but it wasn't like the best player in the game numbers, like they both were at one point.
100%.
So like Pete, you know, when people are seeing that, they're not looking at him for a 8-9 year deal, especially. And Pete's another thing with Pete, again, which is different from Albert did go to college, but you know, from Miguel, who was in the big leagues at 19 years old, you know, Pete's a college player. You know, he played at University of Florida, and he, you know, so I mean, he, you know, by the time he got to the big leagues, he was, you know, already, you know, he was a little older
He's
than
a little older.
some
Yeah,
of
yeah.
these other guys.
I mean, listen, I think for Pete, if I were Pete, this is just my take on it. Listen, you're not getting a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's gone. If I'm Pete, I would say, listen, all right, I'll take a 1-year deal, and listen, if Pete is productive, he can do 2 years, or then another 2 years, and then maybe a 3-year. Who knows? Depending on where it's going, and still make his money, right? I mean, because he's not signing a 7-year contract from anybody or a 5-year contract. Yeah. But guess what? If you get him for 1 year and you give him 26, 27, and he has a monster year, yeah, maybe next year he'll sign for 2 years at whatever money.
Listen, I think you got to look at it. I am willing to bet Scott Boras will be creative with whatever he ends up doing with him, whether it's a 1-year deal and all these opt-outs, or maybe it'll be deferred money, or maybe it'll be something to get him to where, you know, closer to where he thinks he belongs. I think you know, the Mets are hardlining, like Andy Martino said with us. You know, they're not going to take him for, they're not going to bid against themselves and outbid themselves. And I think that's smart on the Mets part. I get it. Obviously I'm all for the players to make as much money as possible as an agent, but you know, I certainly think that David Stearns wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't try and you know, get, you know, if he was trying to get him for the best deal he could possibly get him for the Mets.
I mean, listen, I agree with that, but there's also that, you know, that point where, you know, and I'm going to get on my soapbox on this a little bit. You know, you see the Mets wine and dine. So yes, he's 26 years old. We know who Soto is. We get that. But you, as you're a person, and you see your team wine and dine this guy, give him everything, and then some, and then hey, you're like, hey man, I'm a homegrown guy. You know, I've given you everything. You know, home run derby, you know, rookie of the year, home run title, and I'm not getting the love. Like, that's got to sting to the point. Like, even if he was to come back, I mean, there has to be some resentment there would have to be some resentment on Pete's side, right? And I think he wouldn't be human if he didn't have that. You know, you can say, hey, you got to separate it, but listen, like I said, you know, he's their guy, and then you see that same team, your team, show love to another guy and go bonkers on him, and this is where was my point. And listen, you said it before, and I agree. Even, you know, begrudgingly, it's about the money, right? It's all about the money. Soto would have gone to the highest bidder. whoever the most part. I understand that you're not gonna sit at a press conference and say, "Hey, I went because this was the most money." I get that. Even everybody knows that's why you went to that specific team. And I'm not talking about Soto specifically. I'm just talking about just in general. What I don't want to hear is, the Mike Hampton thing where it's like for the school, or Soto saying, and this is my point about Pete. The Mets, they have this thing where, it's like everything is about family, and they made my family feel this. I'm like, but where's the love for Pete? You know what I'm saying? Where's that family love for Pete? So, it really, and again, I'm not even a Met fan. I don't doesn't affect me, but I just feel like if I'm Pete Alonso, even if I were to resign, there's no way that you're not going to have just a little bit of that resentment towards that team, towards, because you wouldn't be human if you didn't. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, and listen, that doesn't mean he's not going to do his job. He's going to do his job, because
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think
but,
it's a business. I think people have to understand that. Fans have to understand that. Fans have to understand that.
No, for sure. I understand
business,
it.
And you're
I'm talking about the player.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think some people might.
So you don't think Pete would have even the slightest bit of resentment towards the Mets? Really? I can't buy that, man. I'm sorry.
I don't agree. I've worked with players who don't look at it that way. So,
really?
Yep.
So they see another guy who making more money than them, and
correct.
And that doesn't affect them if they were shortchanged, if they felt they were shortchanged.
I know plenty of major league players who wouldn't affect it all whatsoever. I don't know Pete well enough to say it would or wouldn't, but I know what you're saying. I get your point. I would be like that, but I don't necessarily know that he would look at it that way. And if the Mets come up and say give him $90 million for 3 years, I don't think that he would.
Well, he's not going to get $90 million.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, it depends on what happens. But look, it's a business. That's how it is. Everybody's got to look at it that way, whether you want to or not, whether you agree with it, whether you like it. It's just the way it is. So.
Yeah, man, I don't know this. I mean, listen. I know it's a business. Us being friends for so many years and doing the show. We've had
Lou. The guy turned down a huge multi-year deal with the Mets, not that long ago, and it's when you do that, you're rolling the dice, right? And then people will criticize contracts, okay? And I've had it happen to me in deals that I was involved in. And again, I say the same thing, like, you don't know the inside of it. And unless you know the inside of it, or why things were done or why things weren't done, but sometimes you hedge your bets, okay? And sometimes you don't, okay? Sometimes, Jose Reyes took less money on his first deal with the Mets, knowing he would be set for life. He would be happy and be comfortable with what it was. Derek Jeter wouldn't do that. Derek Jeter went year to year, and every year he won, and every year he did better, and he got a big contract reward at the end of it when he was getting ready to free agency. Okay, but Jose Reyes did what he had to do for himself, and Jose ended up cashing in a couple years later on the free agent side. Okay, but again, if Derek Jeter got hurt, okay, or tore up his knee and wasn't the same player, people would have been like, what the heck? Like, how do you not get the money when you can get it or whatever? So again, it's a roll the dice. Pete, and again, we don't know who made that decision. I don't know if it's Pete's agents. I don't know if it's Pete. I don't know if it's a combination of the two. Somebody made a decision that there was more there, and there was more gold at the end of the rainbow. And let's get to the end of the rainbow. Didn't work out. That's what happens.
So let me ask you a question. I just want to get your thoughts. If Pete would have had, because from what we're understanding, Stern feels that Pete's years are not there in the future.
Yeah.
But let's say Pete would have had. I'm not talking about Aaron Judge here. Forget about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Pete had a good year. Pete hit his 270. Pete got 45 home runs, 120. is the conversation different today? And is Pete signed today if he had that kind of year? I'm not talking about a monster year, but a Pete Alonso year.
Look, I think what we've heard for the last couple
My
of years.
point is, do you think Stern would still think that way?
I don't know, because I think Stern looks at the analytics, and I think Pete, we've heard this for years, that Pete's, analytics are trending downward, and that he's, again, still productive, not knocking him. And I'm not a huge analytics guy, but that he is viewed as somebody who's in a slow decline.
In a slow decline, yeah.
And they're not going to give him the years that he was hoping for or wanted. And again, he was already, as we said, because he was a college guy, who got to, it takes a little longer to get to free agency when you go to college, and you're in college till you're 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
And then, so he's it's a unique case. And listen, I'm very interested to see what's going to happen, and if the Mets will cave in, or if Pete will cave in, or they'll come to an agreement, or the Mets are going to roll with the younger guys, because the Mets certainly have plenty of players that can step in and take that place. And then maybe the Mets allocate money elsewhere, or like you said, maybe they start, nest egging up for another free agent like a Vladimir Jr. Moving forward. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah,
but
I mean, listen, I think for me, it's either one thing. Pete's going to sign, a very, very, very team-friendly deal, or he's going to be elsewhere. I mean, listen, it's one of the two, obviously.
No, I think so, and I think we'll see how it shakes down, or if I mean, Anthony Santander, someone we've talked about on the show, he signed with the Blue Jays. His contract was, a lot of people were criticizing it. Let's just put it that way. I think that it was deferred, but the market bears what the market bears. So sometimes you just have to do it. And look what happened last year with Boris's 4 guys, it's the market's interesting right now. So we'll see what happens with Pete. The rest of the free agent market, we'll take it from there. Is there anything else we're missing, Lou?
Miami Minute. What's going on? Give me a Miami Minute.
Well, a Senior Bowl's going on. Cam Ward still bandied about. Now I'm seeing new things. He's not going to go in the top couple of picks. We'll see how that shakes down.
Do you want him going to the Giants?
I don't particularly want him going to the Giants, and I have friends with the Giants who I like very much.
Nothing against them.
Nothing against the Giants. I don't have anything against the team. I know some Giant fans that I don't care for, that I'd rather have him not playing with. So, that's one thing. I do want Cam to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I think he deserves it. And anybody who gets him is going to get a steal. So I hope that will be the case. And also the Senior Bowl practices are going on right now. And our guy, Elijah Arroyo, the tight end, who I'm telling you, they're saying he's coming through the roof. He put on a show there yesterday. This guy, he's going to be a good tight end in the NFL. I can't wait to see where he's going to go. Maybe he ends up with Cam Ward. You never know. They could end up teaming together for a long time. So looking forward to that. Oh gosh. Hey, Shockey was on the Giants.
I know. I was going to ask you about Shockey, man. I haven't heard from him for a while.
I know. I miss Shockey. He was the best. I love Shockey, but yeah. So, but listen, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We will see you guys next week. Let's see where we go. But Lou, thanks. We will talk to you guys later.
Take care, guys.